Hello and welcome back to the Starter Series. In today's class, we're going to introduce the concept of sun salutations. So we're going to run through some of the base poses that you'll see in sun salutations. Now, keep in mind there are a lot of variations of sun salutations. There's lots of different poses we can do and add into those, but I'm going to give you the base postures that we're going to use. So there's only a few that I'm going to introduce today. There are more that can be used, so just keep that in mind. Don't be overwhelmed. So we're going to start with a quote by Jean Couch. Doing anything with attention to how you feel is doing yoga. Doing anything with attention to how you feel is doing yoga. So I think that's such an important thing. If there's nothing else you get from the Starter Series, yoga is really all about being aware of your body, how it feels in your own body for that particular day. Really paying attention. And it's something that a lot of us, we don't pay attention to what our body is telling us or how it feels. So just lock that little nugget away in your mind and we'll get started. I would recommend a couple of blocks, at least for these first couple of poses. If you don't have blocks, you can do them without, of course. So we will get started. I'm going to walk you through the poses, and then if their time allows, then we'll just go through them all, linking them together briefly, but we'll see how that goes. So we're going to start in mountain pose. So if you've watched the video prior to this, you know what mountain pose is, so you can go ahead and get into it. Have the blocks at the top of your mat nearby. They can be on whatever setting you want them to be on. You'll have to just play around with this to see where we're going to need to be. I'm going to put mine at the front here. I'm at a medium. So I'm coming into mountain pose. So mountain pose, as you recall, is feet are about hip distance apart. All four corners of your feet are firmly planted in the mat. They're grounded there in the mat. You're rooted and grounded, stable and strong like a mountain. So this is the start of a sun salutation. We start in mountain pose. And then we inhale and rise our arms up overhead. And then we're going to exhale into a forward fold. So you're going to exhale, hinging at your hips. And you can have a bend in your knees. And you're going to fold forward. Hands can come to the blocks or to the ground. Or if you don't have blocks, they can come to your shins or again to the ground, whatever feels best. Now, the amount of bend you may need in your knees is going to be really dependent upon your hamstrings. And it's also going to be dependent upon how many of these you've done for the day. If it's your first one, you're going to be a little tighter all along this back line of the legs here. So I would suggest a nice deep bend initially for that forward fold. Some people have no problem coming with straight legs and they can bring their body all the way down to their legs. I am not one of those people. You may be, and if so, great. And if not, also great. So this is your forward fold. So we're going to take a breath here. And then we're going to inhale and come into what's called halfway lift. So when we inhale, this is where blocks would really come in handy, especially if you have tight hamstrings. We're going to go with straightening the legs or straightish, and we're coming out with a nice flattish back. Your back may be a bit rounded if you're new to this, of course. And again, bring those blocks to whatever level you need to have them at to get straightish legs, straightish back. These are all relative terms. And we're looking out in front of us, so at a point out on the floor in front of us. This is our halfway lift. And a half sun salutation are the three poses that we just did. That would be considered a half sun salutation. So if you hear teachers say we're going to do some half sun salutations to warm up, that's what you do. So we're going to come on and stand back up into mountain, and we'll run through those three poses together because those are usually linked together for a warm-up. So sun salutations are great for warming up the body. They're great for building heat. They're great to just do on their own if you don't do anything else. So it's a good one to know, at least the base poses. So again, come back to mountain pose. Hands down to your sides. Inhale, raise your arms up overhead. Then you're going to exhale. You can have a bend in your knees if you like. You're going to fold forward. Make sure you are hinging from your hips. Fold forward any amount. Hands could be blocks or floor. And inhale and halfway lift and look out in front of you. So now my legs are straight-ish, my back is straight-ish, and I'm looking on a point out in front of me on the mat here. So that is a half sun salutation. Mountain, halfway lift, and forward fold. Forward fold, come back in, halfway lift, come out. Let's come back into mountain pose, and now we'll do the next pose. So the next pose, we're going to start on all fours to introduce this one. And if you've heard anyone talk about yoga at all, this is a pose that most people have at least heard of in one capacity or another, and it's downward facing dog, or down dog is another way that we say it to shorten it. So I find that this pose is nice to start from all fours position. So I've got my hands, and there's some variations here you can do. You can have your hands pointing straight forward on your mat so that your middle finger is the one that's pointing straight on the mat. You can turn your hands out slightly, and sometimes this will help if you have any wrist issues. I find this works for me. So then it's more of the index fingers pointing toward the top of your mat. You can have them wider on your mat. You can have them closer in. Again, there's a lot of variations you can do here with downward dog. So you kind of need to play around with it and find what works best for you. But I would suggest at least shoulder width apart, or not, if not wider, just to begin with. And you can have your hands turned out if you like, or have them straight forward. So from here, I'm in this nice all fours position with a neutral back. If you watch the couple videos back, we introduced this pose. And then from here, you're going to tuck your toes. Now, your feet can be about hip distance apart, or even they can also be wider apart, and we'll show you that when we get into it. Tuck your back toes, and then you're going to lift the knees off the mat, and now your hips off the mat, and you're going to come into what looks like an inverted V. Now, your heels may or may not touch the ground. Mine do not touch the ground. You can have bent knees here. You can come into a much wider down dog stance if you like with your feet. So your feet could be as wide as your mat. They can be closer in. There's a lot of variations here. So find the down dog stance that works for you. So my knees are bent initially here to kind of help open me up and warm me up here. So you can keep your knees bent, or you can straighten them out. The idea is here is to push through your arms, push through your legs. Your hips are point up toward the sky, and you're in an inverted V. This is a strengthening pose. This is a pose that's used a lot throughout yoga, not just in sun salutations. Take another breath there. Exhale and lower the knees and come back down. So that one, if you've never done that before, you can feel a little, wow. Might take a little bit of effort and work. So, come down if you need to. If the teacher calls for that pose, for you to hold that pose longer and you need to come down, then just come down. There's never a thing that says you absolutely have to do everything your teacher says at all times and you must stay in down dog for 6 minutes. No, you can always come down if needed. And by the way, I've never held a student in down dog for 6 minutes. So just to put that out there. I don't think that's usually a common thing to happen. So that is down dog. So that would be our next step in our sun salutation. So we went from mountain, forward fold, halfway lift, and then we would step back into our down dog. Now you can also come into it from all fours. I showed you from all fours just to introduce that pose to you. So that's one way to come into it. Next, we're going to introduce modified plank. So I'm going to show you modified plank. I'll show you what full plank is, but for a starter series, I feel like modified plank is a great place to be. It's a great place to learn the form and to get into the pose. So again, we're going to come into all fours. I'm going to step my hands a little bit further out in front of me here. And you can have these wider if you like. Same thing, kind of the same idea. Now I'm going to have my hands pointed more facing toward the long edge of my mat instead of having them turned out for this one. And then you're going to rock those hips forward, and now this is modified plank. So you're going to feel that in your core there. So I've got my arms are straight, and they're right above my wrists, right above my shoulders, below my shoulder, excuse me. So I'm coming forward here, and I'm in my back is nice and long and straight. Full plank would be toes tucked, knees off of the mat. You're welcome to do full plank if you like. This is much more challenging. It's a great strengthener. It's good for the core, but I like to recommend starting in modified plank with the knees down. So all fours, you've got more of a flat back here, and you're up more upright. With modified plank, you're coming forward. And full plank, knees off the ground, looking out in front of you, breathing there. So go ahead and come into your modified plank. Hold for another breath. And then exhale and come on back. And that is modified plank pose. Now, from here, I'm not going to do what they call, I'm not going to do a full chaturanga is what they call it. This is literally this is lowering down from plank down to your stomach. So I'm not going to reduce that too heavily today. I'm going to just show it to you, but I'm not going to go into all the alignment on that just today. Mostly because I'm having trouble with my wrist, so I have to modify my way of coming down anyway. But chaturanga, or lowering to the ground, is what you'll hear them say at chaturanga a lot. So I want to go ahead and introduce that concept. So from modified plank, you would simply come forward and lowering down, keeping the elbows tucked in to the sides of your body, and you would come down to the mat. And the other thing is to try to keep all your finger pads on the mat when you're doing that. So trying not to let your hands splay out. So when you're coming down, you don't want your hands to splay out. So I'm going to skip this for now, although when I do chaturanga, and especially they'll do that from full-on plank, and my wrist just doesn't work for me. So I don't want to try to teach that pose to you right now since I'm having trouble with my wrist. But you'll simply lower down with your elbows tucked in, and you'll come on down. So if you want to skip that and don't have to go through all of that, you can just lower yourself down carefully. And then from here, the last pose that is included in a base sun salutation is cobra pose. So go ahead and lie down with your forehead on the ground, and your hands will be right next to the sides here of your chest. You're going to try to keep those elbows tucked in, so don't have those splaying out. Elbows tucked in. And cobra can be low, medium, or high, so there's a lot of variance here. So you have to kind of decide what works for you. Your frontal hip bones are on the ground when you do this. So you're going to inhale and rise your head and your chest and your back away from the mat. This is a lower cobra. You could come further up, or you can come up in a high cobra. Don't push this past what works for you. So for a lot of us, when we're first starting out, we want to be in that low cobra, elbows tucked in, and we're just coming up a bit. So this is a back strengthener. Your legs are stretched out on the mat, and exhale and lower back down. Let's try that one more time. Inhale and bring yourself up any amount, and exhale and come back down. The key here is to not come up and then round into your back. You're trying to open up the chest. So that is cobra pose. So now we have made our way through the base poses of a sun salutation. So I'm going to run through those now, put those all together without spending too much time on it, and don't get hung up. If it's difficult to think about linking them, then just work on each of those poses individually by themselves, and eventually you will find the flow to link those together. So I will do one round of all of those linked together just to show you what that's like. So I'm going to leave the blocks out of the equation for now just to make it easier, but if you need blocks, grab those. So and if you want to try to follow along with me, go for it. We're going to stand at the top of our mat in mountain pose, or you can watch the first time and then do it. Arrive in mountain pose. Inhale, rise your arms up overhead. Exhale, fold forward. Bent knees or not. It's up to you. Inhale, halfway lift. Your hands can also be on your shins here. So if you don't have blocks, you're practicing without blocks. Straight legs, your hands could be on your shins. Halfway lift, look out in front of you. Exhale, we're going to fold back in. And then we're going to step back into downward dog. So go ahead and step both of your feet back and come into your down dog, into your inverted V. You can also drop down to all fours, down to your knees, and come into it that way. So really push through the floor with your hands, all the way up into your shoulders, and then your legs. You can have bent knees or not. Down dog, and now we're going to rock forward into plank or modified plank. So you can come into plank if you like, and then drop those knees. And tuck those back toes. Now you're into your modified plank, and then lower your body down to the mat. And then you're going to have your forehead on the ground, hands next to your chest, shoulders down the back here, elbows tucked in, and then inhale and rise up into cobra. Any amount. Exhale back down. From here, you can come up onto all fours to go back into down dog, or you can rise yourself back up to modified plank and then back into your down dog. So we come back into down dog. It's a cycle. The sun salutations start at the beginning and then they go through and they come back through again. And then from here, from your down dog, you're going to walk forward on your mat and arrive in your forward fold. Halfway lift on an inhale, look out in front of you. Exhale, fold in again. Inhale, rise yourself all the way back up, bringing your hands up overhead. And exhale, back with your arms to your sides into mountain pose. So that is one sun salutation. So I think we have enough time. We're going to run through that just one more time. You don't have to. You can just simply watch if you like, or you can follow along. So that is one base sun salutation. Like I said, there are lots of variations on that. There's lunges involved. But for today's purposes, we're going to keep it simple. And you'll feel that you'll start to notice your breath will match with the movements over time. It'll become second nature. So don't get hung up on if it's not happening today. Inhale and exhale in your mountain pose. Inhale, raise your arms up overhead. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold in. Inhale, step back into your down dog or come into all fours and then down dog from there. I'm going to stay for the exhale here. Inhale, rock forward into plank or modified plank. Untuck those back toes. And exhale, lower down. Forehead to the floor and inhale into your cobra pose. And exhale back down. Inhale, tuck those toes. Come back into your down dog either through all fours or just straight back through your modified plank. And we're going to stay here for 2 breaths at your own pace. On your next inhale, look forward and walk forward on your mat. And then exhale into your forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, rise yourself all the way up, arms up, reach overhead, reach, reach, reach. And exhale, arms down to your sides, back to mountain pose. So that was one full cycle of a base simple sun salutation. Now, of course, I use simple in relative terms. It may not necessarily be simple, all those poses, but you link those together and you do a few rounds of those and you will find that it's a great warm-up for your body. It's a great heating for your body, and it's just great if you don't have a lot of time, run through a few of those for your day in the morning, afternoon for a little boost of energy. So thank you so much for joining me for this class. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope it was helpful. And in the next class, we're going to put together all of these concepts into a nice, simple little flow for you. So thank you again for joining me, and until next time.